On this week's show, discussing concept to BIM with Britton Langdon from Snaptrude. In this week's news, hiring tricks, robotic research, adoption ceilings, and more. All right. Conference season's winding down, but it's not quite over. Actually, by the time this comes out, it will be over. But Jonathan, it's good to see you, man.
It's good to see you too, man. It's over for me for the year. I'm done. I ain't going back out until MEP Innovation in late January, and I'm gonna spend my holidays not traveling. But I gotta say, it's interesting. This is the first time I haven't had to go to AU and do all this extra travel. To hear all the news coming back, I actually do feel like I'm missing the party.
Well, and we're a couple days from it recording because we wanted to get ahead. And I'm with you. AU will be my last run of the year. I'm going to be seeing our guest here, Britton, at AU. And then I, got a little event after that I got to worry about. So, Britton, what's happening, man? It's great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you guys too. Appreciate you having me.
If y'all don't remember, that's a new logo, but not a new guy to the show, man. Britton's an old friend of the show.
New swag. I was in episode 40, 240, and then what is this going to be? Do you know? I
don't know. We dropped the numbers, man.
I have to see that. Yeah. Well, I think it's like 300 and something, or maybe 400 and something. But yeah.
You're on the cusp of being 400. Like it's somewhere in there. It's probably like 380 something.
Well, I was 200 episodes apart, and I'm less than that now. So that's great. I love it.
Right on.
Yeah, man. Well, we are going to get in. It's going to be a lot of fun to catch up with where Britton has been along the way. But before we do, we gotta pause for the cause.
Whenever you're talking about something as substantial as suicide awareness and as alarming as to statistics around construction being the second highest rates of suicide in industry, we'd be fooling ourselves if we thought that this was a one-player fix, meaning that it just takes one silver bullet or one easy button to solve this challenge. This is a multi-threaded challenge, if you will, and it's really something that is the responsibility of all of us to lean in, to raise awareness, to provide tools and resources, to up-level conversations we have around, in construction, we're pretty much, hey, what's my job require me to get it done at any cost? Well, we now see what the outcome of that is. So I think it's important that we partner together to really have a unified voice around why mental health awareness is important, why it matters, and how we can frankly do better as an industry. It takes each of us leaning in to really create that.
All right. You guys know we're back on YouTube, youtube.com/@the ConTech Crew. And my call out of the week, I told you if I saw you subscribe, and I remembered. Adam Hoots, my brother, thank you for subscribing. We appreciate it. And Forrest Huff, thanks for always dropping in and giving us a little bit of feedback every once in a while. Appreciate you, man. At the ConTech Crew, we focus on technology that solves industry problems, and we've always believed in our sponsors. So much so that I went to work for one of them. So today, I want to talk to you about Join. Every construction project is a unique prototype, and it's actually shaped by thousands of decisions that impact the owner's business case, design, and the budget. Today, the communication driving these decisions is disjointed across all the stakeholders. Work happens in email, Excel, estimating, resulting in delays, waiting for decisions, waiting for access to information, and sometimes that information is outdated and incomplete. Managing the expectations of the team and keeping the project moving forward is a constant challenge, and a lot of times drives skepticism amongst the contributors. Join empowers general contractors to build with confidence and maximize the potential of every project by connecting these owners through new workflows that fit into your existing processes. We bring design teams and trade partners into a single platform. There's transparency and collaboration in the decision-making, which builds trusts and sets projects up for success. You might be asking yourself, do you need another tool? Well, let me tell you, Join fits in seamlessly with your processes and your other tools. In fact, we're here to help those other tools. Regardless of your estimating system or your project management process, Join will be a valuable added resource without disrupting those other systems and your teams. Check out Join, the collaborative project delivery platform for the built environment. Learn more at join.build. All right, we're back. Britton Langdon. Now, the shirt says it all, Snaptrude. But before we get to there, you were on 40, 240, now it's 380 something. Talk about what happened in between and sort of where you've been, because I'm a little bit jealous that you had a little bit of reflection time in there.
Yeah. I obviously was very fortunate to have my previous company, MSuite, acquired by Stanley Black & Decker DeWalt, and spent a little over a year there at Stanley, and really enjoyed the people I got to meet and work with at DeWalt, and kind of got the opportunity to hire myself out of the relevance that I used to have as president and CEO and founder and all that, which was really great because it's in a position now to blossom. I still keep in touch with all the crew. In fact, we're having a party at AU, and a lot of those folks are going to show up to the party just because they want to say hi, and they're great people. So, I had a little bit of time to reflect on kind of what I wanted to do in the future. And I think at the end of the day, I still want to have a huge impact on the industry. I saw a great LinkedIn post the other day by Dave Francis, who was at a conference, I guess, and was talking with Jim Reese from Trimble and a few other guys that had been in the business for 20 plus years now, and just talked about how a lot of us are the road warriors of the industry that are trying to blaze trails here and there and affect change and affect growth. And I really resonated with his post because, I've been on the road a lot too. I average 150 nights a year at a Marriott, so it's my second home. But at the same time, that's how you build growth in this industry. It's how you make changes. We're the very fortunate ones, us on this podcast, to be able to sit in front of quite literally hundreds of organizations that are out there trying to create the built world, and we get to listen to their pain points and their wins, and try to learn from each one of those as best we can. So I had the opportunity to reflect and decided I wanted to have that impact still, and was fortunate enough to meet Altaf Ganahar from Snaptrude and fall in love with that product and that team, and off I went.
Yeah. Before we get there, I got to thank you publicly. Your 150 nights of a year on the road. The nuggets we get on the road aren't always from the stage. They're from the others that are out there road warring with us. And so Britton gave me a few tips on Marriotts and points and that has really, and some of the secret things that go on out there that have really made travel easier. So I have to give you credit for making my road warrior life just that much better. And I'll go to the Dave Francis thing. I think what Dave is cool about is you hear me talk about people who go from industry to technology and back to industry and what it brings. And Dave's showing us that empathy that you get for walking a mile in each shoe and how that can really, truly help and change a company. So where he is now, it was Trimble Dimensions. So that's a good one. We did a little preview of that show, and it was great to see his post from that because he's walked a mile in all those shoes, and he's really helping, I hope, the current companies with understand just how hard it is on all sides to do this, that it's not just nobody's hiding their cards. It's like being an architect for a while, then being a general contractor for a while, and then you realize, oh, wait, you weren't holding things back. You just, this is the life we lead. So, which kind of brings me to why you're at Snaptrude and what you're doing there. Cause this is a leap sort of out, to make a change in a different vertical for you.
Yeah. I'm now the chief strategy officer here, which, I don't know what that means. It means that I'm involved in everything, and helping Altaf, learn new ways of screwing things up and and fixing them. At the end of the day, I've been very fortunate to have been a startup founder for 8 years. I've bloodied my nose against many a wall, and it's my job here to help keep the team from blooding their nose on the same walls I did. However, I saw it also as an opportunity to branch out. I came from a long time ago working as a salesperson at Victaulic, and a regional manager at Victaulic, and then going straight into the MEP business and prefabrication and BIM, and then being a startup founder in the prefabrication and BIM world, to now being in the architectural space and learning about conceptual design and schematic design and the challenges that architects have with contractors, and seeing the inverse of what I've lived over the last 10 years or so. So it's been a great opportunity to open my eyes to, as you said, Jeff, it's not like everyone's trying to hold their problems, super close to their vest. Generally, people are pretty open when you say, hey, why do you guys do it like this? And they go, well, let me show you. And you go, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. I could see why that is a problem for you. Here's the problems it creates for me. And that's been a great opportunity for me so far. And obviously I'm just scratching the surface, and I'm excited to learn more as the time goes by.
We share that passion too, as well. You guys, this episode will be out a little bit after. We had Rachel Riopel on recently. I'm just fascinated with learning each vertical because it gives you so much of I'll go back to the same word, an empathy, an understanding, perspective. I heard this one recently and I'm going to get it wrong. Jonathan, I tried to do this on, I think it was the Dorks the other day too, where it's like you have your own perception, like your perception is your reality, but your true power is if you can have a perspective that understands everyone's perceptions. That's where you can lift up out and go, okay, I know how this diverse group is actually working together, and I can see where each of them is driven by their own perception. And I can have perspective over it. And if you just got confused, so did I. But I'm still working on that one in my head. So, Jonathan, I know I jumped in there. I just wanted to say Britton and I agree on learning about architects. But you were in line to jump on and talk to him because this is also geeky.
Well, it's geeky, and it's geeky in like when I heard the news that he went there, I almost like called him up right away and said, okay, I need you to explain to me every little piece of what they're doing, because it really is the future, and I think, Britton, you've done a great job. Like, hey, prefab is going to be the future. Boom, I'm in prefab, and really riding that sort of cutting edge. And I think right now, and I don't even know what to call it. Do you call it generative? Do you call it computational? Do you call it machine learning design? I think that group as a whole is the future. And you of course picked one of the best companies that I've seen out there at doing it. And it's not in our space, which makes it even more interesting to me, because I'm just like both of you. That level of empathy you get by understanding the other space, that information helps so much in making our space better. So can you tell me, and maybe everyone out there, like what are we really doing at Snap, and like what is their core focus right now?
It's interesting. The number of times I've been asked that in the last 3 going on 4 months now is incredible. The number of text messages I got after I posted on LinkedIn that I was going to Snaptrude, they're like, wait, what? What does that do? What does that mean? How does that work with what you know? And honestly, I was picked more probably than I picked them. I got to give the credit or maybe not credit to them, because they grabbed me out of the ether and brought me in. I will say what Snaptrude is doing is at its core a cloud-based collaborative design tool that allows for design authoring by multiple stakeholders in real time, full stop. What that means is different to everyone when you ask them. It means the potential future of a clashless design. It means true multiplayer mode for design review, for coordination, internal, external, for being able to teach new people in new ways. Like, how do you teach someone how to use Revit today? Well, you stand over their shoulder, or you sit in a Zoom meeting. What if I could actually show you how to design things in real time? Like the learning environment changes when it becomes cloud-based. The computational side of it is a whole different animal. I can do all of my computation in the cloud. I can have very powerful servers where all my data lives, and you just have the 3D representation of that data on your browser. That means that speed goes way up, right? That means that real-time changes are faster. To pretend that I know the implications of where this could go would be a massive overstatement. I think what we're doing is I would make the equation of today we're building the idea of a search bar in the web. And what that means, will we become a Google-like company? I believe that we will. But I don't think any of us could pretend that we know what that will look like in 5-10 years.
Coming out of the trades, because again, you're one of a very small handful of people that I would say ran a successful startup, but also could sit down and really understand what detailers, what the nuts and bolts of trade coordination and collaboration is. What kind of juice do you see that might come out of Snaptrude for sort of the trades down the road? Because really, that's what you know what I'm interested in.
Sure, yeah. Well, let's take a step back, because I think there was a quote I read recently. By the way, if you want to have a good resource, there's a professor out of the University of Washington named Dr. Perot Nourian.
Okay.
He teaches computational design for architecture, engineering, and construction. He had a quote in there in his most recent thing, which was 3 or 4 weeks ago, a class on artificial intelligence for AEC. And it was from Cedric Prince. Do you remember Cedric Prince, 1966? It was technology is the answer, but wait, what was the question? And that's where we are as an industry. We always try to come up with the solution before we really understand the problem. And so I'm saying all this to say, I've spent the last 8 years understanding the problem of prefabrication, and prefabrication is a solution, by the way, but it's also a problem. And I think when it comes to design, whether it's architectural design, engineering design, construction design, we tend to jump to conclusions before understanding the problem. And I think part of my excitement about this role is better understanding the upstream problems that are creating the downstream problems for construction design. So what sort of things can we do for MEP, for prefab, for modular? I don't know yet, but I can tell you that when it comes to computational or generative design, what if you had in mind the MEP constraints of prefabrication and modularization and standardization in play before you began your generative sequence and at the architectural conceptual level? So let's create this beautiful design that also is really easily prefabricated with certain standards that all of the MEP industry can live by. It's really challenging because you have things like local codes in play. You have the human effect, right? You have egos and preferences and things like that. You have spatial constraints that change depending on the type of building. But at the end of the day, you can absolutely look at mapping those constraints into a formula that can be used to start the conversation of what does it look like to have true DFMA?
Yeah.
Because I think today's DFMA is designed for modularization. It's not designed for manufacturing. It's designed for can we build a cube? And let's be honest, no one wants to build a cube.
No.
Throughout history, architects have been sculptors, right? They're making the statue of David, right? But when you make the statue of David, you don't have to consider that he needs a brain and a heart and a circulatory system and a liver, and you don't have to do that. But when you make the human body, which is our living buildings that we inhabit every day, you have to start thinking about that. So it's how do we bring the living body into the sculpting process? That's part of the challenge and a part of the opportunity we have at Snaptrude.
You know what? It sounds a lot like what you're doing is what happened in manufacturing a little bit, where they ripped off the MA from the DFMA and they said, well, what if we design for the environment? What if we design for
Exactly.
high energy input? What if we design for, and build in at the earliest stages the understanding of the concepts that make a building great. So I'm really excited to see that get started and get moving. Do you when as you're going out, because you talked about we always move before we understand the problem. I kind of sometimes think I'd almost rather you make solutions for the jobs that I don't want to do rather than the problems I have. But in that case, are you seeing that people are seeing a lack of that pre-planning piece as one of these huge problems. Like when you planned, you did not plan for the reality of construction.
I think there's a part of that. I think that's part of the idea behind the statue of David versus a living body.
Exactly.
There's just not that thought. But I also think that the pre-planning process is optimized for the wrong results. So if you're looking at how we're planning a project, we're typically planning on this customer wants this box to cost $80 million. And it's like, okay, well, do you care to have an HVAC system? Well, oh yeah, of course we do. Well, that's a variable you didn't put in there. Okay, do you want to have a parking lot? Well, yeah, of course, because we need people to be able to park to come here. That's another variable. And so when we start with too few constraints. And so things tend to slip between the cracks. And it's only discovered when the trade contractors are trying to actually build the thing. And that's why we have so many RFIs and change orders that come back up, because it's just not well thought through. Because again, as much as we can do at the architectural level to think through those things, we don't usually have the time or resources allocated to doing that by our customers.
And I think this is where I would jump in and say, like, even if you had all the time in the world, there's too many constraints for you to really understand, right? This isn't a matter of, this is where that perspective and perception come in, is that like, we think that they don't want to, but actually in talking to and starting to understand this process, there's just no possible way that an architect can understand all of that and still be great at what they do and be efficient in what they do, right? Like it's its own little diagram of a Venn diagram of things that you can and cannot have. And that's just the way it is. And so what you're saying is, and it's funny, this might be my naivety, but it's changing the discussion from productization to constraints and giving constraints up front that will allow them to design in a way that will allow us downstream construction, general contractors and trade contractors to operate in a better set and a better environment, which is pretty wild.
Dude, it's digital empathy. You're designing for digital empathy. We're going to set up rules to make the beginning of the project empathetic towards the way that you laid out the David just kind of sunk in as I was, but you are designing a product that has digital empathy for the construction process, pushing that back to people that, like Jeff said, don't have the time or the ability to build that for themselves. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. That was just...
No. That's awesome. A great perspective. It's results driven. It's not necessarily just constraints, because constraints are what limit the number of results you can have. So if you say, I want this result, then you can work backward through constraints and then into your function and your mathematical equation. So going back to like computational and generative and AI, one perspective I think we need to change, and this is also from that piece by Professor Nourian, is that he brings up this gentleman who said, and it's probably controversial, but he says, it's gardening, not architecture. And I would also say it's gardening, not construction. And what I mean by that is, with the improvement of AI has been around since the 60s, but with the improvement of AI and generative design and all the tools that we're all out here building and solutions that we're all out here building for these problems, we have to understand it's an iterative approach. And you don't have to come up with the statue of David conceptually before you understand that we want a building that is a hospital that has a certain ROI to it and work backwards through that. It's not easy, but I think the more we work together earlier, from trade through architecture, the more likely that those results will be ones with far less delays, cost overruns, et cetera. And I think we don't need to, it doesn't have to be IPD, it doesn't have to be design build, design assist, it doesn't have to be named something fancy. Let's just all work together a little bit earlier and come up with solutions to problems before they come up.
I love that, but I also think it does fall right in line with TVD, target value design, right? That we're hearing that.
Another acronym.
Another acronym, right? Like we needed another one. But hey, this industry loves them, so we need it. But TVD actually really is about alignment, right? So we could, again, don't even call it that, but let's just call it that we are aligned as a team. And the whole idea is getting out the core value in the beginning, the alignment. So if you're building a laboratory, it's, how many stations, right? If you're building a hospital, right, it might be a NICU. So if it's a NICU, it's how many beds do you need in that NICU? That might be your value, right? That might be what you align around. But we're also seeing change.
It could be even more granular than that. Instead of just a lab, what kind of lab? What kind of research? What kind of NICU? Is this for children who have certain conditions or other conditions? Like,
you jumped ahead of me because Britton and he jumped ahead of me because that's what I was going to say, is because then it could get more granular. Like, hey, this is actually a cancer recovery facility that wants to get down into the weeds, that they've learned that sunlight, natural light, access to the outdoors, these types of environments that soothe people are far better and create a better outcome. So we value natural light. We value access and views to the outdoors. So we're driving that facility even farther. We're getting beyond beds. We're getting beyond care. We're getting to environmental impact. I heard this a long time ago from an architect it was really eye-opening, because his take was, listen, I don't care about the constructability as much, right? That I would love to pass more of that off to the people who are great at it, the general contractors and trade contractors. What I want to focus on is studies around schools. How can we create better learning environments? How can we design in such a way that kids are optimized for learning? And also, hey, we just had a pandemic. What if we need to open up our classrooms to the outdoors and create ways to social distance and still provide services so we don't see the interruptions? This allows them to focus on that. And really be out ahead and work on more of what I think when I talk to architects now, I've learned they really do care more about than all that other crap we just talked about. Because really to them, it's crap, and that's okay. Jonathan, you asked, like, hey, I want you to design for the crap I don't want to do. Here's a start, right? But you got to start at the beginning. And that's the interesting thing. So what, obviously the folks that listen to this show are BIM, VDC, technology, operational people on the construction side. What is Snaptrude doing for architects right now? And why should the GCs and the people who listen to the show care about it and keep an eye on it?
Yeah, I think the main thing we're doing is making conceptual designs, like design options and iterations, much, much faster and more democratized than they've ever been before. Because it's cloud-based, I can share you a link and you can watch me iterate that design in real time if you really wanted to. I don't have to, go through file uploads, publishing, syncing. Wait 30 minutes and it'll be ready. You don't have to do any of that. It's real time. Why should GCs care? Well, when it comes to clash detection and coordination down the road, again, I can see a clash as it happens. So if I just show that clash, you can determine if that is meaningful or not. We can also build in intelligence, like a light fixture going into the ceiling is not a clash. A door going into the wall is not a clash. A door going through a steel beam, that is a clash. So, those types of things that we can do going forward. And then the ability to make changes when you see those problems in real time. So it's not, I know we don't talk a lot about theory and sort of rose-colored glasses perspectives on this, but the practical application is that as design happens, we can actually make changes to the little crap, as Jonathan said, that nobody wants to do. We can make those happen in real time rather than taking notes of them, creating issues, sending them back to my BIM guy and say, hey, change these 37 things before my meeting tomorrow. We can just knock it out right there in the meeting if we really wanted to. So there's a lot of, like I said from the very beginning, we're building sort of that search bar. What we can do with it, we have some idea, but there's, I think, a lot of tangential and unintended consequences that we'll have as we go.
Yeah, it amazed me because I actually sat with Altef before you went to work there. And first of all, having him walk you through a model, I was amazed because first of all, you'd have to teach me Revit for me to even follow you in a model, which by the way, I didn't have to do to get through Snaptrude. But If you've ever met anybody I've never met anybody that talks that fast and isn't full of it, right? Like that was unique, man. I was going to try to have him on. I'll be honest. I was really happy you came along so I could have you on so I could actually understand it so that maybe somewhere down the road I can interview him and have him on because that was wild. But I love the democratization, the access to the real-time information, because that's what's been holding us back. Is our ability to, from concept through CDs and into construction, be cohesive. It's just not been possible. So Jonathan, I'm wondering what have we sparked there? You got more questions, I'm sure.
I think the biggest thing I'm wondering is, each time we get a piece of sort of technology that's at this level, start to enter the market, I'm always asking, what do you think this is going to seriously disrupt? Clearly, you're taking a huge workflow or huge process, which is RFIs and all of this, and you are condensing it with the real time significantly. But do you see anything that this disrupts beyond that? Like what does this get rid of? Because I could see a bunch of project engineers going, oh, well, this is going to change the nature of what I do.
Yes, I think there are some things. I think clash detection coordination as a function, I don't think it eliminates it by any stretch of the imagination, but I definitely think it will massively change the way we do it. There's basically two ways today that people do coordination. One is sort of asynchronous, where they're building in their own environment and then they share those. They link them and they bring them together and then they analyze them and then they go back and do the work. The other is, some sort of somewhat working session environment where, I'm doing something and then I sync and publish and then you can see it and then we go back and forth. I think that goes away. You don't have to do any of that anymore. As I can hide what you're doing so I don't have to see it or worry about it or be distracted by it. But then if it disrupts what you're doing, what I'm doing, disrupts what you're doing, I can be notified immediately. You can be notified immediately. Oh, hey, hold on. Britton just ran a pipe right through an architectural piece that I think you're going to want to care about.
Wow.
There's that kind of stuff that could change everything.
So basically, you're going to change everything to be what looks a lot more like a design charrette, where everybody's in the room at the same time.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, we borrow this multiplayer idea of design and iteration isn't new. We borrow a lot from the marketing and design, the UI UX design world. Figma is a great example of the ability to do that. The difference between what we're doing and what they've done is we're taking a 2D canvas like Figma and Miro, and then even things like Google Docs, and Microsoft. We're taking a 2D environment and putting it in 3D. And so now you have to do 3D collaboration versus I'll throw a sticky on this, I'll put an image, let's mark it up, let's see what the interaction will be from scene to scene. Yeah, it changes the way we design in a very asynchronous way today to a very fluid, natural way of a truly digital version of construction. So we always talk about virtual design and construction. This would actually be a virtual design and construction, which brings up the point, we will have sequencing problems. Like I'll be in some place I'm not supposed to be and you'll be in some place you're not, you know what I mean? But that happens in real life too. So it's nice to figure those things out in the virtual world and see how they might affect the real world rather than doing it sort of in a vacuum or in a silo.
What are some of the applications that are going on right now that are most interesting? What are some of the sort of beta level or I don't know what level you're at with some of the designs? What's going on right now that just you think is really the best example of sort of how to use it today?
Yeah, I mean, one of the coolest things I think we're doing right now is we're able to iterate from concept to BIM, from Snaptrude to Revit and Revit back to Snaptrude. And without losing any of the design fidelity. So I can bring in all your Revit families, do all your design in Snaptrude if you want, take it to Revit, and you'll see as Revit families in Revit. And then if you want to make structural, fundamental design changes, instead of having to do that in Revit, you can actually take it back into the design world, again, doing it in real time, do all those things that are nice and collaborative, bring it back into Revit for documentation, so that, you can do your plans and sections and details and all that.
Yeah, dude, that sounds
So
like a design charrette. Dude, we need to talk after the show. This is the answer to a problem that we've been talking about with manufacturers and switchgear and a whole bunch of other stuff, man. It's a really cool concept of taking everything into that all at once, situation, which I think does totally change. I think that's the disruptor, is you've changed it from being sort of an asynchronous collaboration to being a basically a digital build with a digital construction, family, or digital architects and engineers. It's amazing.
Well, that's why I said the core of it is a collaborative, web-based or cloud-based design authoring solution. What that means, I don't think we know yet. But so we're working on finding those practical applications today with architects at a conceptual design phase. And as we go forward, we'll learn about where's the next most important place. Is it making it where we can do MEP design in the cloud? Is it making it where we can see clashes in real time, like I was talking about? What is the next most important thing we need to do to really drive that value? And I think it's funny too, because, as software people, Jonathan, you've been in the business a long time. When it comes to designing software, the most important thing is, what are the results that you're looking for? What value are you being asked to provide? And how do you design the software to do those things in the most economical, efficient, delightful ways? So I think it's the same problem. It's the same idea. It's just we have the time and resources to take a slower approach than, the average construction project.
Well, and this is where I was just at LCI this year for my first time at Lean Congress. And I'm going to argue that, and I loved your answer to disruption because you backed away from it a little bit, that it's not disruption as much as it is an accelerant to the process. So I'm going to go to this story a guy told me while we were there about the greatest project he was ever on. And he begins to tell me that the team showed up with a U-Haul with all of their light tables and servers and everything, and set up in this office space in another room. And they had a big room over here, and they would run back over and do the things they were talking about and come back. And it wasn't like the whole description was like, we wanted to get it as close as we could. And as you were talking about it, I keep hearing it's an accelerant. It's all those things without the U-Haul. It's in the web now. It's here. We can all sit in that room. We can be that close. We can be that connected. And you just created an accelerant to what the people wanted to achieve. We've wanted to achieve these things, but physically been limited along the way by where we are in the technology space. And it seems as though Snaptrude has gotten to the point where we can we already ditched the light tables and all of that. We know that. But I thought it was funny because the guy's been chasing that experience ever since.
We ditched the light tables. However, we moved really quickly into a screen that was the light table. It's not like we moved away from the process. We kept the process basically the same.
Yes.
So, yeah.
But now we're going to make it we're going to democratize it so that each person that walks into that room has a level of access and understanding. To call out another one that did it, like Bluebeam did this, right? With what they did inside of the PDFs, right? That was the 2D world. This is now the next iteration of the 3D world. And I just think it's going to open up a ton of doors for the future for the collaboration process, right? We keep hearing that term. But I always like to say you keep using that word, but I don't think it means what you think it means. But this is, collaboration's usually a contractual obligation, not an iterative, solution-oriented process. So it's really cool to see that this happen.
Well, it's interesting. We were talking earlier about computational design. There are inputs like data, obviously the parameters. There's the idea that we need to be able to visualize the results. And when it comes to computational generative design, eventually AI in some ways, most people always need the result to be shown to them to say, yeah, I like that or not. I'm very much that way. Like when our software engineers say, oh, I got this thing built, I'm like, great, let me see it. Because until I see it, I can't really, it has to be real to me for me to be able to say, yeah, that's great, or no, let's make some changes. In generative design, if you're doing it in a cloud-based environment, when there's a problem, like, hey, this is a potential RFI, wouldn't it be nice to be able to say, let's see 10 other options of how we could do that more efficiently to whatever result we wanted to get, right? We want more sunlight in this area, less sunlight. We want a higher R value, a lower R value. I don't know why you do that, but whatever the result is, what if we could put those inputs in our actual model and say, give me 10 design options, and then let the team go, okay, I like 3 and 6 and 7. I don't like the rest. Okay, let's iterate off those. Why do we like those? And it doesn't take 12 hours to go back and have someone change that and make it look the way you want it. No, it's done like that. That's part of how, the value of a truly cloud-based collaborative environment that allows for real computational, real generative design more than just the idea of a test fit. Like, test fits are great. They're really, really important. But now you can have it real-time iteration, which takes you to that gardening idea instead of, here's the statue of David and you're going to be done with it at that point. Figure out the rest.
Yeah, it's a really key component that you feed it the parameters. So it doesn't even know the parameters, right? It doesn't know what you know or what you want. It'll never know that, right? Not until we're long gone. But it can get to opportunities faster. But of those 10 that come back, guaranteed 4 of them, you're like, yeah, nobody ever do that. So let's get rid of those. Now we're down to 6, and we've done this in minutes.
Yeah, but
what used to take weeks.
Yeah, but what if the we'll never do that was informed by the fact that your model is looking at, literally every building that's ever been built in the same way? Like, yes. It's not going to be like, that's insane. I don't want a window that's shaped like an egg. I want, this. It's going to know like more.
So when I say these four, meaning we will never do that as a team. Like, this is just, these are 4 that are just, we for whatever reason, we agree we don't want those.
I'm just making the argument that those 4 will be very difficult to decide from. You're going to be like, damn, I like them all.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Which you might be introducing a whole new set of problems on. Yes, hey, here's 10 opportunities, and we're really great at getting along, aren't we?
It's process theory. At the end of the day, you fix something, and something else is gonna bottleneck. That's the way it goes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I would love to keep going on this conversation, but I also know you're going to be really fantastic when we take you into the news with us. Because if you can't tell, the 3 of us like to sit around and do this on our own. We just are lucky to throw a microphone between us. That's the fun of what we do. So Britton, stay along with us. We're going to get into the news of the week. All right, Jonathan, what do you got for me?
Okay, so Meta's FAIR team is releasing 3 tools for robotic researchers, and this ties in so closely with what we were just talking about. So one of the problems you have when you're training robots is you have to train them against a lot of data. So you have to have a lot of experiments to sort of help these robots be autonomous. And what they said is, well, let's just virtualize everything, and let's get a learning loop going at a faster than reality frame of reference, and so they've built 3 tools. The first one, and I'm going to walk through because they're just cool, is a habitat. So they call it Habitat 3.0. And what it's designed to do is it's designed to be a high quality simulation that we're going to then use to sort of allow that what would normally be sort of reactive learning or deep learning to take place at a higher rate in a virtual reality, environment. And it makes me think of Britton's idea of iterations on an idea. Okay. So if we can take all of these iterations and start feeding them back as learning, now we have a really good way to speed up the amount of learning that needs to take place before we have good models. And this is all based around trying, at the end of the day, this is trying to get robots that have better autonomous capabilities. And as a community, honestly, they didn't really have a lot of sort of assets to go out and say, okay, well, I want this robot to understand how to move when someone enters the room. I can't tell you how many times I walked in and my shark vacuum hits me in the damn foot. In fact, I think the thing does have a brain and it knows where I'm at and it follows me around and just tries to get in my way. Okay. And it shouldn't. And I actually, if I had a vacuum that didn't do that and knew the brand name, I'd be like, that's a vacuum I'm buying. So it is a vast, I'm going to get yelled at because that's an oversimplification, but that idea of we need to start training these things. We're getting that point where we have, learning models that can build in that. So we need these test environments. The other one that I liked is they're actually releasing, there's another one in there that is sort of a synthetic habitat. And this is a lot more about, I think for us in BIM, we build $1 million models all the time, multi-million-dollar models all the time. So our level of detail compared to what most, normal people think of as a high level of detail model, we're like way above that. But for them, I think this is super high detail. And again, it's trying to say, can we simulate environments to allow us to do things that we normally have to just wait for people to do? I think the right example for the other one is we always talk about building buildings using an agile framework. Well, in order to do agile, you have to have an iteration loop where you fail and learn and fail and learn and fail and learn. And that means that we'd have to have people living in these buildings. Well, we can't have people, but we could have NPCs. We could have non-play. In Britain's, in Snaptrude building, we have 300 non-playing characters that will actually live in that hospital or that dormitory for the next 300 years. And it will come back to us with the knowledge of, well, after we lived in it, we found out that you couldn't do this, this, and this. And to do that for a shortened period of time. The last one, and I know I'm kind of blasting you on this because you guys are people that I feel like will have some pushback at the end, is they're releasing to the community. They're trying to basically build, do we have a hardware and software set for autonomous robots within the household so that I can build, behind me, I have a bunch of little robots that I'm building that are really simplistic. But the only reason they're really simplistic is because I don't have the level of machine training to give them autonomy. The servos work the same way. The ways that, we know how to make robots move. What we don't know how to do is communicate to them where we want you to move and how we want you to move, how we want you to interact with that environment. So this is a cool bunch of, basically, I'm going to call them play spaces of different flavors to help make robots really start to act like the companions I've always wanted them to be. Since seeing Battlestar Galactica, I've wanted the robot dog. Okay. So and it's been a long time, not the new Battlestar Galactica. We're talking the original with the cheesy little dog. I wanted that day. And now I see it. I have it digitally. And it's learning, so hopefully we can have it real time soon. But what do you guys think? This is kind of playing off that idea, Britton, of iteration being a way of learning that is now, fully understandable by AI. So now we just need to teach it really, really fast.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it is about understanding the variables and understanding the constraints. And when you're building an engine like you're talking about, it's incredibly complex, and the better tools we can have as tinkerers, as an industry, to inform of what's good and what's not good, the better off these tools will be and these solutions will be as they grow. So I think that's a really cool idea. Did you guys see the spot the dog thing that now is able to have attitude and personality?
Yeah.
It's really cool.
It's very. Did you see it interacting with another dog? That was what sold me on it. It was like, okay, you got this right, because that other dog is very much, being communicated well with.
Well, I'm talking about the one that has the British accent, and he was in the research space in Boston, and they were talking about he'd walk up to a glass wall, and they'd say, "What do you see?" And he'd be like, "I see a glass wall, and it's a little bright outside." And you're like, whoa.
This is not, I didn't see that. I have to go find that now.
Yeah, it's on. I saw it the other day on the interwebs somewhere, and I was like, oh boy, here we go.
Britton, I saw one where they took the Boston Dynamics dog and they used other dogs to train it on how to react to a dog in the same room. So we don't know, we can't really understand how dogs communicate. But you know what? We have a model that digitally we can sort of learn, so it's like a dog learning to be a dog. I thought that's what you're saying. What you're saying, it's awesome. Now we just need to combine the two, and we have a dog that knows what dogs are saying, but he's relating it in a British accent. What does that dog think?
We just went off the rails. We had a great episode, and then we went completely off the rails. Let Jonathan bring in an article that throws us into talking dogs. Yeah, well, at least it's not enough to get us canceled. But
what do you got, Jim?
I want to see our models thrown into this thing. I want to see all of those $1 million models you're talking about, Jonathan, be converted into learning type spaces exactly like this, so that we actually design and implement things that work, but also that fail fast. You said 300 years in the future. Most of our buildings, what happens in the next 50 years, right? It's 20% up front, and it's 80% in the operations and in the satisfaction. And how many people spend 40 years in a building going, I wish I had known that before I built it, or spent a lot of money to fix it. That, something like this could teach us. And by the way, if you could get that robot to stop hitting me in the foot. I don't have one here at this house, but my buddy has one. And I swear, I step on the thing all the time. I swear it spends its whole life going, okay, where's that guy? I'm going to follow him around. Yep. And then whenever I sit down at the table, bam, right into my foot. I'm like, I think somebody put it in this meta team thing and said, look for foot and break toes.
Yeah, dude, I think it knows whenever I close a door and gets on the other side of it. Just so when I open the door, I have to push it out of the way. It's crazy. But with this iterative learning, I mean, one of my very early jobs was for a hospital as a project manager, and I was cutting out foam shelving for ER doctors so they could reach behind them and say, no, it's not close enough. When I reach behind me, I want to grab this knife or this thing. Yep. And it just gives you a way to do that without having to have all of the friction of bringing someone in, building all these environments. We can do that learning in the virtual. And I think it's been a promise of virtual for a while. It's great to see that it's finally coming true.
It's funny. That's the one thing I didn't think about when you were talking about it was, early on when I got into the world of tech with construction, we used to talk about putting on the HoloLens or whatever, the Oculus or whatever it was back then, and getting doctors in it. And it's like, that's not the most valuable use of a doctor's time, actually. Like in hindsight, it's like, yeah, that's a good idea, but really, what if we just knew what they needed and we could just simulate what they needed? That would be a far better use of their time, because I would rather that they don't tell somebody, well, I can't operate right now. I'm in VR trying to figure out if I can reach the knife behind me in the future one. Those are parameters, constraints we can plug into this thing. So we could go down this rabbit hole for a while. What else you got for us, buddy?
One of these I think I just put in because it's so it was so helpful for me. I've been using, and I think not everybody, a lot of people are using Chat GPT on a daily basis or, on a weekly basis. And it's always been sort of a struggle to move between all of its different flavors as you're thinking of what you want to do. And also we give it like commands where we're going to ask it a bunch of questions about information and then say, cool, I'd like an infographic and all of these other things. And it used to require you to pull out, you go over to Dolly to do images, you go over to this plugin, that plugin. And what they released, and I just really got to play with it yesterday and early this morning, was they've taken all of that, they put it into a single GPT-4 Turbo. So now instead of moving between these sort of, I'm going to call them modules, you can just, it's a one-stop shop. And this, I always get a little afraid when they get more powerful, but this is definitely making it more powerful. This is making it something that more and more ends up being opened on the side of my screen on a regular basis. So I thought I'd at least talk about it. And the other thing they're doing, and I think this is going to help a lot of developers out there, is it's going to be cheaper. And we need it to stay. Like, the biggest fear I have and have had since the beginning is that this is going to get so expensive that the things that I build aren't going to be able to run on it if they scale up too large. So that idea that one of the 5 updates that they let out was actually a price drop. Was insane to me. You know, you're in the middle of your peak of adoption and you're going to drop your prices a little bit. That is the way to double down for me. What did you think there, Jeff?
Well, I saw something different in this one. So I see that price drop and I see the new turbo tools and not GPT 5.0 because they figured out how much GPT 5 is going to cost them. Just heard recently $500 million to jump and train to GPT 5 and not seeing the cash flow in as much as they had expected. And so I see this as a usability and cash flow play that are fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I'm not bashing it. I'm actually thinking this is phenomenal. Like, don't give us another thing we can't understand. Actually take what you had, be responsible and monetize it in a way that's digestible. Have you ever adopted a product and then realized they priced your butt out of it? That happened. Nobody listening's ever had that problem, I don't imagine, or isn't currently going through that. So I think this was a way to harness it, to monetize it better. I mean, I think you're going to see, and I was looking at some predictions about how Copilot from Microsoft is going to leverage a lot of this and actually where a lot of their cash flow is going to come from it. And, you know, they're $10 billion invested in OpenAI right now. So it's not like they don't have a bit of monetization looking to get that back. So that's what I saw in it. The other thing was new knowledge cutoff. This is great because we've been bashing them for a while that it was September 2021. Yeah. I think now that they've gotten some of the ability to get out the hallucinations, they're more confident in consuming more real-time data. I don't know that it'll get to fully real-time for quite a while because of the need to prevent hallucinations and other things, but it's really cool to see that. Longer prompts, not a big deal for me. But I think the multiple tools, Jonathan, they're taking it out of the obscure completely and putting it into a little bit more of a functional. I'm interested, Britton, what are your thoughts on it?
I mean, part of me it says this is marketing and sales 101. You do your market skimming, you get as much you can off the early adopters, and then you start looking for mass consumption. I also think them combining the tools makes it easier to use for the average user, right? I hated going to DALL-E. I went to DALL-E probably 30 times in the last year just because it's really annoying. I didn't think it was that good, honestly. I'd rather use Midjourney or some other stuff. But now that I use ChatGPT all the time. So now that it's all in one spot, okay, that makes it interesting. And then we were talking before the show with them announcing the ability to create your own GPTs on November 6th at the AI Day for ChatGPT. I think that takes it to the next level where now your early adopters have not only the ability to really leverage their ability to create prompts, now they can create their own GPTs for personal, for business, whatever you want to use it for. So I think it's a little bit market skimming. I think it's a little bit a revenue grab. But I also think, there's a lot of other competition in the market. You've got Twitter coming out with theirs. You've got obviously Google Bard has been out for a long time and is going a long way with theirs. I don't know. It seems pretty par for the course where if you were the leader out of the pack or leader out of the gate, and now you need to come back to a little bit more reality for mass sales.
I was just really happy that it hit all my high points because I really did have problems with the smaller prompts. So I had to write a Python script to allow me longer prompts. It's like everything that I wrote Python scripts for has been eliminated. There's a Python script that linked to the two. There was a Python script that did this and that. And I would imagine that they didn't even have to think about this. They literally just monitored their own software, and their software basically said, here are the top things that you can change to have the biggest impact. Because, when you're monitoring that data with that level of technology, I hate to say that you're unlikely to make poor moves. And you are likely to do the 101 stuff just right out of the box, I think, too. I agree totally on that.
I've been saying something for a long time, probably 9 months, and I think that they're going to prove me wrong. If not already, they will very shortly. And that is, there's a whole industry of prompting. Like there's a whole, skill of prompting. I think that's going to go away. I think they're working to make that easier. And, at the end of the day, it's a barrier of use, right? If you have to
Yeah.
be very good at prompting the AI, well, not everybody's going to be. So let's make it to where you don't have to be very good. And it's like, oh, damn, if they can do that, that's a whole different thing.
That's hilarious because I actually thought this is the end of the prompt engineer, probably the fastest flash in the pan, half a $250,000 a year job. By the way, I saw a prompt engineer for $250,000, $250,000 a year advertised, and I was like, that seems a little high. And flash in the pan, it's gone. So if you were starting to build your resume towards that, you can go ahead and throw that into ChatGPT and let it change it for you. Go for something next, guys. Well, with that, I'm going to jump into the human side of things. And my news for the week, I saw this one on Inc.com. Google for Startups shares a genius hiring trick that fuels explosive growth. So I think it's talking a little bit about Google X here. They now just call it Google for Startups. I think they decided that the whole thing for having X for everything was a bad idea, and maybe they just get away from that. Although then a whole thing, Twitter turned into X. I don't know, whatever. But this is all about the hiring process. And to me, I'm always drawn to looking at articles like this, especially for startups, especially for a world like we live in construction technology, where it's still young. I mean, it doesn't feel like it is, but it really truly is. And here was employing Google for Startups hiring strategy helps eliminate the endless sifting through applications, lengthy interviews, employee churn, and stunted growth. The real problem is one of the hardest things for startups is analyzing, hiring, and maintaining and keeping great people. And a lot of time gets wasted in that process, especially when you either choose the wrong people or do the wrong thing in looking for those people. And I think this was cool. Choose the person over the position. We hear hire for cultural fit, hire for fit all the time. This was cool. What if you don't know? Right? You're an expert in what you're an expert in. You're not an expert necessarily in the thing that you need next. And this was cool. It's like, well, what if you think you need a social media strategy to grow your business? And so then you go out looking for somebody with social media growth experience. But if you go hire a really seasoned marketing professional, they might tell you, well, you really don't and aren't a good fit for a social media strategy. In fact, you're better for this strategy, whatever it might be. And so it's hiring the people and choosing the person over the position and understanding your needs. But then once you hire them, let them do their job. This was my favorite Steve Jobs quote. Why do you hire smart people and then try to tell them what to do? That's not how this works. You hire smart people and let them do what they're really, really good at. Another little thing in here that I thought was interesting is that if you can adopt this approach, people first approach, skill set approach, picking the person over the position, you can also then lean into and get your candidates from your current employees and your close friends' networks. We have seen this for years, that it's not really all about what you know, it's about your network. And a lot of us have been building our personal networks and believe in recruiting them, but only to places that we think they're going to flourish. But it's interesting, this grasped onto the fact that if you do that, then the person whose network they came from are invested in that person's success. And that is a trickle-down effect that just, it amplifies the success and your chances for success. So, and finally, autonomy. We gotta have faith. We gotta have trust. You've hired these folks, let them go do what they do. Be there to help, be there to answer questions, be there to guide. But I've said this over and over, and I forget where I heard it, but if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Right. And if I'm ever the smartest person in the room, the whole room's in real trouble. So let's be honest. It really is about surrounding yourself with people who are the best at what they do and then letting them go do it. So I'm interested because, Britton, you're in that world right now.
Yeah, I think anyone who's ever worked with me or for me will tell you that I very much hire people over position. And I think it's really important at the very beginning of that process to be super clear that failure is always an option and that it's okay. And I always say, anybody that's ever interviewed me who's probably laughed if they heard this, there's only 4 ways this works out. I love you and you love me and everyone's happy, right? You love me and I don't love you and you're unhappy and I fire you. I love you and you don't love me and you quit. And then you don't love me and I don't love you and you quit or I fire you and it's all gone. And then some of those are better than others, but at the end of the day, those are the only 4 ways it goes. And all of those are okay because it doesn't have to be a perfect fit every time. But if it is, I want to know all the time if that changes, right? If it was a perfect fit on day 1, but day 10 it's not, let's talk about why it's not. And hopefully there's a solution. But if there's not, you have a career and a life, and I have a career and a life that has nothing to do with our relationship with each other. I can still be supportive of you. I can still be friends with you. If you want to go and work for my competitor, that's fine. Or my totally different industry, I don't care. But at the end of the day, we're people first, and we're colleagues and employer and employee second. And I think at the end of the day, if you live that way, whether you hire the right person or the wrong person, you just have to move fast with that. So that's my opinion.
I love it. And Jonathan, you were a leader in the construction industry as well. How was your experience with that?
Britton, I think, actually broke it down very, very nicely with the way that I view sort of the relationship in hiring. But I went out to Portland to work with a company, to work with Dyna Electric, and I met this head of VDC, and he's like, well, I'm not really, a strategic head of VDC. And I said, so what is it that you do well? He says, oh, I read people and I put them in the right seat. And I was like, you know what? I need you in my life because you do hire people based on the person. I'm one of those people that does that. And usually the people that I see that are miserable in a situation, I run right into one of these problems they have in this article. They don't have autonomy, or they're sitting in the wrong seat. They're not the wrong person for the company. They're just in the wrong seat. You could take the same person that is a grumpy, VDC person, move them to your fab shop, and they will be the happiest person ever. And it's really understanding when you do hire talent, when you do hire these people that are gifted, being able to clearly see their gifts and where they fit into that organism that is your business. And I do think that this article, like I was reading it as you guys were talking too, I think that it does apply more to the startup and technologies jobs than it does to some of the more physical trade level jobs. Like a physical job, this might have a harder time finding a home. But in these jobs where we're building startups, where we're building new things, where you have a high level of creative required, this is definitely, a good rules of overall thumb for that. Again, I think that, every organization has a couple people that really do know where people belong. And if you can find those people, that's a big part of that hiring, is not finding the people when they're outside your business, but when they're inside your business. Did you hire them internally for the right job? You hired them from the outside, they came in, but on the inside, are they really hired for that right job?
Yeah, I didn't think about it that way. There are certain physical things like, if you're going to be a welder and you're going to be in a fab shop and welding,
you have
on
some
job site, an
constraints.
electrician. Yeah, there are constraints there, right? But as you grow any one of those companies, allowing those people, bringing in people with different experiences, but the skills, right? There is a challenge there in matching a specific skill of welding or electrical or, the core foundational things you need. But I think the construction world could learn a bit, especially because we're talking about technology stacks. We're talking about going into new business models. We're talking about adopting things like Snaptrude and other tool sets that are going to fundamentally and foundationally change the business model itself. If all we have are people who understand that old business model, we're not going to be good at making that change necessarily. But then again, John, you could be really right too. It's about also who in your organization can look at the deck and shuffle the deck to match the new thing too.
Yeah.
So a bunch of skills there.
With technology companies, I think it is more important to have range than to have people with a lot of experience. I'd rather have some rangy people, like you had said, people look at for a cultural fit that's right. And you know what? That diversity hire should actually be a diversity of culture too. If you have everybody of the same culture in your business, guess what? You're going to be fragile as hell. So you need to have that diversity of culture along with it. I think that's where would go with this, or what I was trying to say is, in creative jobs, range beats experience. In jobs where you're just doing the same thing over and over again, you want that experience, that 10,000 hours of welding. You know what I mean?
I'll tell you one additional fact of this that was always something that was very important to me is also intent. What is their intent on being? Because like the very first question I ask in every interview is, why are you here? Because I already work here. I know why I'm here. Why are you here to interview at this company? Because grass isn't greener. I worked at MSuite back in the day. We had no funding. We weren't, venture backed and all that beautiful stuff. This thing's going to go to the moon. You're going to make millions of dollars, blah, blah, blah. It was, we have a really cool idea and there's an industry that has a lot of problems and we're trying to solve them. And people really like what we're doing. Do you want to be a part of that or not? Right? I mean, is that what you're here for, or are you here for some other reason? At Snaptrude is a little different. We just raised our Series A. We got 20 million raised over the last year. Yes, we are going to the moon, and it's still important that people come here for the right reasons. And I think breadth over or variety or the ability to hire the person because of who they are, not necessarily what they know, is critically important. But so is the reason why they're there.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not your fit culturally, but your intent alignment is very key.
Yeah.
So you need to be aligned, but you want to have a diverse culture so you can have a diverse set of experiences that's greater than the sum of their parts. I think we go on for this one forever. I'm going to bring the last one in, and this is an interesting one from Built Worlds because it doesn't really follow up necessarily the title and what we're hearing from it, but I thought it'd be great to have you two talk about this. Is construction tech approaching an adoption ceiling? Despite the endless U.S. construction tear, which they have a nice little graphic on here, the ConTech space is feeling some growing pains as investors and innovators alike tighten their purse strings for what could be a long winter. It's no secret that we've seen a couple of the pretty heavily venture-backed startups have some bumps recently. Our friends at Open Space and Ingenious had some recent layoffs. We've seen more and more on the road this year, more and more budget constraints and really trying to figure out where you can and can't spend money, and cuts coming. The cost of money is higher. Like, let's be honest, it is. Inflation rates are what they are. It's having an impact on both construction and the technology space. I honestly don't think we're approaching, and then, you've got some slowing in the implications of Procore's earnings and their earning calls. But I don't think it's an adoption ceiling as much as there's some fatigue and a maturation process. I believe that 2024, and you've always got to look for the silver lining at any bump in the road. And for me, it will be, can construction companies not just shut down or cut cost? Can they, the ones that are going to succeed, can they focus on what's truly having an impact? On their business and on their bottom line and on their performance, and what was something flashy, nice to have, right? Can you build a technology stack out of your technology pile and efficiently and effectively apply that? That might appear to be a ceiling because certain products are going to get moved to the flashy tool section, not necessarily the workflow section. So for me, it was interesting. I just wanted to bring it up, especially because this will be coming out right before 2024. So I thought I'd get a little bit of your look ahead there. So Jonathan, what were your thoughts?
I almost pitch this over to Britton first because I think he has a better view of it.
I'm happy to.
Yeah, Britton, you go first. I'm going to follow you up because I feel like you live right at the edge of this.
I do, and I've lived it now in two different worlds, so it's very interesting to see. I think there's four things going on right now globally that are affecting this. I think the economy is one, and I think that is not necessarily as bad as some people would want it to be. I think the economy is still okay. I think it might take a turn for the worse. It probably will take a little bit of turn for the worse in the next couple of years, but we've been saying that for now, a little over a year. The stock market globally is not great. I know, well, it's very up and down. So the sort of economic drivers and market drivers are there and having an effect on people's willingness to expend time and financial resources towards anything outside of something that can generate ROI tangibly. There is fatigue because there's let's face it, over the last 6-7 years, many of our customers, and when I say our customers, I mean the industries, software industries, or AEC tech customers, have had to deal with products that are suboptimal, that are in beta, that are new and don't work exactly the way they should. And so the ROI on them is longer and longer than maybe what they had hoped. I think we're getting to some maturation of that. I think, when it comes to the MSuites of the world, that's a very different market. That's very new compared to the Procores and Autodesk of the world, right? So the MSuite 2015 to 2020 technologies that are maturing now, I think, are now generating ROI very, very tangibly. But in the last 3 years, where we have $8 billion in investment in AEC technology, so there's also a lot of, and this is the fourth thing, noise that's happening. So, it's funny. When I was at MSuite, maybe 2-3 years ago now, it was the first time I heard of people starting to do technology audits. And remember, Trent and I spoke on check yourself before you tech yourself last year at MEP Innovations. There's been a lot of auditing going on of what are we actually using versus what we're paying for, and that's global, right? People are wanting to know how many Netflix subscriptions they have, and how many Instacart subscriptions they have, and how many Bluebeam subscriptions, et cetera. And I think where we're at today is interesting because I'm seeing now in the architecture space, much like what happened in the construction space a couple of years ago, people are hiring or promoting or just creating a title for people in their organizations as a technologist. And it's someone to be the buffer between the individual contributors who actually are generating revenue for the company and the outside world that is trying to get them to use technology. And that's really good, but I think it's causing a slowdown in implementation that all of us are going to see. Because let's face it, 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago, you could have walked into any MEP contractor and said, "Hey, I really want you to try this new technology. It's awesome. So-and-so is using it. You should use it too." And they'd go, "Cool, let's give it a shot." That's not necessarily the case today.
Yeah, it's having a big impact. Before you go, Jonathan, that's another push for, that's exactly what Rachel was. Rachel Riopel from HDR, digital practice lead. It's a little bit fancier. Construction technologist, maybe architectural technologist wasn't the thing, but you're right. Jonathan, your thoughts?
I think I think like Britton, there's a lot of things that go into this. I teach people how to do their tech stack, but I teach people how to do it as what jobs is technology doing within your company, and sort of treating each piece of tech as if it was an employee. It either overperforms or underperforms or anything else with the investment. And I think this is, if you want my general term, you have a bunch of VCs that thought they knew what we wanted and didn't ask us what we wanted. Or they said, we're going to solve a problem. And we're like, we don't have problems. I have a bunch of jobs I need to do, but I don't necessarily have problems. And I think that mindset that went into who gets VC money and who doesn't get VC money was mistaken and picked a bunch of losers. We have jobs that are to be done, and we have programmers now internally at contractors programming for their one-offs, because it's like, no one's doing the jobs that we want done. You're not making products to do the jobs we want done. You're making projects to deal with some problem that I don't necessarily have. So I get it. that they think it. I totally disagree. We are not approaching an adoption ceiling, not even close. The other thing that I put in there that I think is real that no one wants to talk about, and that is knockout features. And what I mean by that is one person or one conglomerate of software decides to knock out other software by bundling or putting in poison pill features that take other tools away from contractors. I have a bunch of tools that I use in programming that I'd love to use in contracting. And the reason I don't is the other digital tools in contracting have knocked them out to maintain market in their area, or have bundled inferior products. Man, I'll tell you what, I'm doing a bunch of building coordination. I won't mention the product I'm using, but it is missing the bare minimum to function at a higher level. Like, to function at a higher level for coordination, it's missing it. I would love it to be more like Snaptrude and have real-time collaboration, but I don't even need that. I need it to do the bare minimum to do coordination, and it doesn't. But you have a ton of people buying it because it comes free with something else. You know, if it comes free with something else, everybody should be nervous. Like, anything that comes free with something else, that's because it sucks. Okay. So it probably sucks. That's why it's free.
You heard it here.
This is my last ConTech cruise.
We're gonna slow him down. That's another episode for later. Maybe under an independent label.
Yeah.
Construction Dorks, where we can have that further conversation. Jonathan, man, I know I love having you on, buddy. Oh God, it's so good to have you on. And I had to have you on to talk to Britton. Britton, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I appreciate you guys giving me the time.
Yeah. And I look forward to, this will be in the future, in the past. I don't know which one it is. I'll see you in a couple of days, man. I look forward to catching up with you in Vegas, spending a little time at Autodesk University together.
Absolutely.
Jonathan, thanks for coming in and getting us canceled. Appreciate you every time, buddy.
Anytime you want to talk about something uncomfortable, just have me on if we could.
You got it. That's why I brought you. And thank you for tuning in today to geek out for our interview with Britton Langdon. To read all our news stories, learn more about our guests, and to listen to the show, visit thecontechcrew.com. This is the ConTech Crew signing out. Until next time, enjoy the ride and geek out.